Welcome to the Division of Local Services webinar relative to the balance sheet checklist. My name is Jennifer McAllister, and I support training initiatives here at DLS. Before we get started, I want to remind participants that this webinar will be recorded and posted on the DLS YouTube channel for future reference. The PowerPoint slides will also be shared along with any links referenced. Please submit any questions you may have using the Q&A function on the menu bar, and they will be ended at the end. Today's presentation will be led by the BOA supervisors, Jared Curtis, Tom Guilfoyle, and Andrew Nelson. And I'm going to hand it off to Jared now.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Today, we're going to be talking about the balance sheet checklist. And our goal is to walk through each question and discuss what we're looking for and things like that. Also, we're going to show you the free cash proof that we use on our side to prove out each community's free cash prior to certification. With that said, if you have any questions, please load them into the chat. We will try to answer those questions as we go. One of the things that we'd like to do here is we want to get as much participation from you folks as possible so that we can answer any outstanding questions that you might have. We're starting to see balance sheets roll in now, so we know that, you folks may currently be working on them. So please ask your questions.
Yeah, please put the questions in Q&A versus chat. We're going to use the QA function, please.
And we'll try and answer them on a more general format. If you have a question about how something works or anything, we'll work with that. If you have a very specific question relative to your community on how to do something, we'll probably follow up with you or have your field rep follow up on that a little later.
There is a question that's in the Q&A now. This presentation is definitely geared towards municipalities, cities, and towns. I know there's a couple of individuals on here that are from a regional school. But yes, this one's strictly focusing on cities and towns.
There are many similarities, though.
All right, the first question on the balance sheet checklist. Are there any unrecorded property tax refunds due to taxpayers as of June 30th? So if you haven't recorded a property tax refund and it's reported here on the checklist, this will be a reduction to free cash. Ideally, we want you to be recording all of everything on your balance sheet prior to submitting it. But just to keep checklist number one in mind. So if there was a property tax refund and the answer to this was yes, we would be asking you what that amount was. It should be reported right in that box below the question, and it would be a reduction to free cash. Question number 2, have you accrued property tax revenue on your combined balance sheet? Most communities answer this no. We do have a few that come in that answer this question yes. So if you're accruing property tax revenue on your balance sheet, you're basically taking potential free cash from the next year and you're realizing it in this current year here. And we would be looking at using this figure in our triangle to make sure that your real estate and your personal property receivables equal your deferred revenue plus your abatements and exemptions plus these 60-day accruals. Tom, Andrew, do you guys want to add anything to this one?
No.
Yeah, I would say that, some municipalities book a 60-day accrual for their real estate, and they've always done it. It's not necessary. You don't have to do it. As Jared said, you are taking, revenue from the next year into the current year for your free cash purposes, but it's not something you have to book.
Question number 3, do the amounts due to and due from offset? So when we're reviewing your combined balance sheet, all funds, that Excel template that you must upload to the balance sheet submission page in Gateway, if you have due tos and due froms, they must offset. So if they don't equal each other out, we're going to be asking you why, how come. So this is going to generate additional questions so that we can get to the bottom of this. So before you submit your balance sheet, check your due tos and due froms if you have them, and see what's going on. Because if you answer this question no, be prepared for us to be asking you why. Question number 4, have all payables and encumbrances been recorded, including accrued payroll? Ideally, and I think I speak for the 3 of us that are on this call right now, we'd like to do away with this question. Everyone should have their payables and their encumbrances recorded, including their accrued payroll. So make sure that you're making these entries before the end of the fiscal year, before you're submitting your balance sheet. If you do answer no, again, be prepared for some follow-up questions as to, how come, what's going on, because we want to know how come you're not booking these. So be prepared with that. And if you do answer no on questions 3 and questions 4, a good idea would be to have an explanation uploaded to the balance sheet checklist, and you can do that at the bottom above the signature section. So that way there we'll have some additional information when we're reviewing this.
Jared, we have a question in so far on the due to, due froms.
All right, what do we got?
What about due to, due from separate component units that may not show up on your combined balance sheet? Not sure exactly what they're referring to, but they're talking about transfers or
So I suspect that what the question is referring to is if there is a due to, due from another entity like the town's electric light department, which may or may not be on the
right.
balance sheet.
Those would still show up on your balance sheet.
Yeah, the due to, say you owed money to the electric light department or a related component unit similar. You would still show the town's portion or the city's portion on your balance sheet. We just wouldn't see the other side. For us, that's not the same thing as a regular due to, due from. I think if there was a due from a related unit, so effectively a receivable, and it wasn't offset, I think we would show that as a reduction of free cash.
Right.
Correct. And if, good point, Andrew and Deb. And if your community does have, due to receivables, and then when we look at the liabilities due from, those numbers should offset. And that's what Deb's getting at is, so that's what we're looking for there.
But
if you have it, just go ahead.
I was just going to say, effectively, if it's a related unit that's not on your balance sheet, like an electric light department or something like that, that would be what we would look at as like an outside receivable. If you don't have it offset in some way, then it would be a reduction of free cash.
And there was another
question. I hope that answers.
And many places have their light fund on the combined balance sheet, even though it's not something under our jurisdiction. And if that was the case, it would hopefully offset.
There is another question in the Q&A. Who typically does this form, the town accountant or finance director?
That's a good question. So for those of you that don't know, the balance sheet checklist is to be completed during the free cash certification process. So when the accountant or the finance director is putting the balance sheet together and closing the accounts and completing the forms that are located in DLS Gateway on the balance sheet tab, the individual that would be doing this would be either the town accountant or the finance director. It depends in the community, whose responsibility that is. All right, so question number 5. Have all votes from free cash and retained earnings been recorded? Like question 4, question 5 is another one where we want all of your free cash and your retained earnings votes recorded properly and reported on the balance sheet so that you're not inflating your free cash. So in this particular case, if there was a vote from free cash that wasn't recorded on the balance sheet and it was reported here, this would be a reduction to your free cash. So if you had answered no, you would input the figure in the table that's below, whether it was for free cash or for retained earnings. But again, I want to stress that you should be recording all of these votes from free cash and retained earnings. All right, Tom, you want to go to the next slide?
Yeah. Doesn't want to talk for me. There we go.
All right, so question 6. Report the fiscal year estimated local receipts from page 3 of the tax rate recap and the actual local receipts that have been or will be reported on page 3 of the tax rate recap. Do not include water, sewer, or other receipts treated as special revenue. Report receipts net of refunds. So when you're completing checklist number 6, and you're going to be putting in your estimated local receipt figure, the figure that you report here as field reps and supervisors, when we receive your balance sheet, we're going to be going into your tax rate, your prior year tax rate, to see if the estimated local receipt amount ties to page 3 of the recap. And if that amount doesn't tie, then we're going to be reaching out to you and asking you why. So that estimated local receipt number, when you're completing your balance sheet checklist for this cycle, should tie to your fiscal year 25, page 3, estimated local receipt. When you put in your actual local receipt amount, that should be the actual local receipts that you received in fiscal year 2025. Now, if your tax rate has been completed, or you've already entered information into your tax rate for fiscal 26, we'll be checking that actual local receipt number to the fiscal 26 tax rate recap, page 3, the actual fiscal 25 number. That would be column A of the tax rate recap. And again, if that number does not tie out to what's reported there, it'll be a question from your Bureau of Accounts field advisor asking how come. And one of the other things that we do, because oftentimes we'll get balance sheets in before any tax rate information has been submitted. And so we'll still look at your recap, and if we don't see anything there, we're going to move through the process of certifying your free cash. However, when your tax rate does come in, we're going to be looking at your tax rate page 3 actual figures, and then we're going to be bouncing back to your balance sheet checklist to see if those numbers tie out. And again, if they don't tie out, we'll be reaching out to you asking, why these figures are not tying out. Question number 7. Report the type and amount of any other actual revenues received that is not included in item number 6. Do not include water, sewer, or other receipts treated as special revenue or tax title foreclosure receivable related amounts. So if you received a local receipt that was not reported on page 3 of the recap, and it's going to be for your general fund, you can report it right here. Basically, it's money that you received, it wasn't budgeted, and it's going to close to undesignated fund balance and become part of your free cash. We want to make sure that we're capturing that revenue that you received that's for the general fund, and that's going to be flowing towards your undesignated fund balance. And as we get a little further into the presentation and Tom talks about our free cash proof, he'll talk a little bit more about why we collect the balance sheet checklist, why we're collecting this information and the significance of it. And we'll do that a little bit later on in the presentation. Tom, Andrew, do you guys have anything to add to these first couple questions before I move on to question number 8?
Nope, you're doing great, Joe.
Yep.
All right, question number 8.
We got a question in the chat.
All right, Tom, what do we got?
Provide an example for number 7. So
if a community received a refund, a general fund, something as a refund, and it wasn't reported on page 3 of the recap before your tax rate was approved, that refund that comes back, if it wasn't budgeted on the recap and it's general fund, you cannot spend that money. That money must flow into undesignated fund balance, then be certified as free cash through our office, and then the town can appropriate or the city can appropriate those funds for any lawful purpose.
You sometimes get additional state money in. I think early voting in the last few years, towns got some extra money for that. It wasn't part of their budgeted amount or on the cherry sheet, so that came in after the fact. That would be money that you just close out to the general fund that would have been unbudgeted.
You know, things that we're not looking for here in question 7 is, you know, if you had a tax foreclosure and you collected on that, we do not want to see the foreclosure amounts here. The amounts that you could report through that process, though, would be any interest that's associated with the foreclosure. Because one thing to keep in mind when we look at your tax rate recap, we're figuring that 100% of your personal and your real estate commitment is going to be collected. And we know that it's not 100% collected every year, but that's something to keep in mind. So when we're looking at your tax rate, we're looking at 100% collection for your personal property and your real estate receivables, because we're giving you credit for that there. And so we want to make sure we're not double counting that information.
Someone else has a question. Is there a dollar amount? We got a refund for a closed leasing contract of $9,000. Does that need to be reported? Yes, you should report that. You should report any of these things. It depends on, you know, what your community is and all, what the materiality is. It may not affect the proof, but we do want that information.
Yeah, you want to list a description of the revenue type and the amount in this question.
And also keep in mind that the balance sheet checklist is specifically geared towards the general fund. So that's what we're looking at, general fund, those general fund revenues that are coming in.
And just to emphasize, you only want to report things in part 7 that you did not report in part 6. You might have shown something like that already as a miscellaneous non-recurring revenue on the actual line. So just make sure that between question 6 and 7, that you are not duplicating dollar amounts.
All right. Here we go. We're moving on to question number 8. Report the fiscal year estimated cherry sheet receipts and the actual cherry sheet receipts. Estimated cherry sheet receipts net of cherry sheet offsets do not include MSBA funds. So for question number 8, when you're completing your fiscal 25 balance sheet checklist, for the estimated cherry sheet amount, we're going to be looking for your FY25 total cherry sheet receipt minus the offset amounts. And so the amount that you're going to report here, we're going to check that to your fiscal year 25 tax rate recap, page 2. We're going to look at the cherry sheet amount that was reported. We're going to back out the offset amount, and then that's the number that we're looking for here. And as you can see here, that number automatically populates based on the color coded here. This number automatically comes in here. Now, the actual cherry sheet amounts, this is going to be the actual cherry sheet amounts that each of your communities receive throughout fiscal year 2025. So if you look at your cherry sheet, you can see the items that you're going to be receiving through state aid. As you take in the revenue and you run your revenue report, you can look on your revenue report and you can look for your cherry sheet items that are listed there, and then that's the actual cherry sheet receipts that you're going to be reporting here in question number 8.
Jared, I just want to jump in for a second. Someone put in the chat, it said actual FY24 cherry sheet numbers. So the presentation we're showing you is something that we had prepared prior to the beginning of this fiscal year. So it's on last year's checklist. It's not on the current one. So all we did was updated the fiscal year dates on the checklist. So we're looking for the fiscal 26 information. We're looking for your 25 actuals. the 25 estimate, 25 actuals.
See, one of the things
There's
that we
also
wanted
another
to
question
do,
Go ahead.
one of the things that we wanted to do, to piggyback on Tom's response there, is we wanted to show you a checklist that had information completed in it. We haven't received that many balance sheets, but we wanted to make sure we were able to use a live checklist that was completed in the past. All right, we have another question, Tom.
Yeah, we do. Who typically completes the tax rate recap, and around when is that done? So, well, we just did a seminar yesterday on the tax rate recap.
There's another one on September 30th.
And there's another one on September 30th. So sign up now.
Live in person.
The assessors, I guess, are in charge of the recap. However, it should be a team effort. All of the financial team should be involved. The treasurer, the accountant, the assessor, the clerk. It takes more than one person to put it all together. When is it typically done? Well, when in past history, it's December, but we don't want it done in December. We got 200, I believe Deb told us yesterday, we did 260 odd tax rates in the month of December last year. So we like to see it done much earlier, end of October, November. But it depends on your billing system, whether you're semi-annual or quarterly. So when you get that done, but it's definitely before December would be the best answer.
Another question. For the actual cherry sheet receipts, is that also reflected net of offsets? Yes.
Yes.
Because one thing to keep in mind with the offsets, and the most common offset that every community gets, is public libraries. The public libraries funds is has to be used for libraries, and it would be for special revenue. So that's why we're not including the public libraries. The other offset that's common in some communities but not all would be the school choice receiving tuition. Again, that is a special revenue fund, so that would not be included here as well. That would be, we're specifically looking for general fund, the general fund cherry sheet items. Question number 9. Report other financing sources and/or transfers from other funds. So again, I just want to stress, we're specifically talking about the general fund. So this is going to be other financing sources. So this is going to be funds that are coming from other funds into the general fund. And when we look at question number 9, the 2 columns, you can see one of them's budgeted amount and one of them's actual amount. Really, it's the voted amount, and then that actual amount that was transferred over to the general fund. The key here is voted amounts. Tom, next slide. Question number 10, report other financing uses and/or transfers to other funds. So this would be transfers from the general fund to other funds, whether it's special revenue or trust. And again, these should be voted. If you're completing checklist number 10 and you don't have an amount in the budgeted amount, but you have an actual amount, we're going to be asking you, why is the budgeted number 0? Because anything that's leaving the general fund, there should be an appropriation. It should be voted. So we're going to be asking you those questions. Andrew, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, just to echo what you just said, you cannot take money out of the general fund without an appropriation. So the only time you would have a variance here is if you voted something and the actual transfer out was less than what was voted. You can't vote money out in excess of an appropriation or without of an appropriation. So if you had a transfer to somewhere and the full transfer wasn't made or wasn't needed or whatever the reason was, that would be the only case you would have a variance in this question.
Tom, would you go back up to question 9? There was a question that came in. So if you had multiple votes from the general fund to a capital stabilization fund, you could put it all on one line and tally up the total.
You could do it however whichever way you preferred. You
Yep.
could list them individually, or you could, if it's all coming from capital stabilization and it was going somewhere, you could
Yep.
roll them up, yes.
All right, Tom, you want to move forward again? All right, so that was question number 10. Question number 11. This is one of the big ones that that we see that stump communities, they don't fill it out correctly, so we'll spend a little bit more time on this. And I did see that someone that signed up also put a question in, and we'll touch on that in a second. So question 11 is report the total of all unencumbered, unexpended appropriation balances. So again, what we're looking for here is we're looking for appropriations or unencumbered encumbrances that were not spent in the fiscal year and are going to be closing back to your general fund undesignated fund balance. So a simple example would be, let's just say for ease, your budget for your community was $100,000. And throughout the course of the year, the town or the city only spent $90,000 of that $100,000 appropriation. $10,000 would be your turnback that would flow back to undesignated fund balance and become part of free cash. So to determine this figure, because your communities unfortunately aren't that easy, if you look at your budget to actual expenditure report, okay, if you're budgeting, 50,000 and you're following all your line item budgets down for what's budgeted, and you're looking at what was expended, the next column you want to look at is the variance column between your budgeted and your actual expenditures. And we're looking for you to add up all of the positive variances, and that's the number that should be reported here. If you have a snow and ice deficit in there, we want you to back that out. We do not want you to include that. If you have some other negative figures that are already in there, those negatives should have run through the expenditures. And so therefore, we do not want to include that. We don't want you to net that out of that turn back figure. Tom, Andrew, anything else you guys want to add on this one?
Yeah. The key thing is what Jared just said. You only want the positive numbers. One of the most important things here is you should be entering your budget into your system. If you don't put your budget into your system, you can't track what you have left remaining in the budget to figure this out. We have certain towns will run across and they'll have trouble getting us this number. And after a little discussion, it is because they have not bothered to put the budget. They never set the budget up in their system in the year. And frankly, you don't know what you have available throughout the year to tell the department heads, but you also don't know what's available at the end of the year to know what you're turning back.
Yeah, so I'll echo the same stuff. I mean, if you have a year-to-date budget report, you run it, you look at that report and look at all of the positive amounts only. We have a lot of people that will net numbers in there. We don't want that. We only want the positive amounts getting returned. And the other thing I'll mention about this question is it's often the forgotten question on the checklist. The way it's laid out, you've put in all the other information. So when you're going through it, make sure you're filling out question 11. It quite frequently gets left blank.
Yeah, for newer people, the wording on this one usually confuses them. The terminology, it's not something people are familiar with. It's not uncommon to see people see the word encumbered in there. And I've seen people who just put their reserve for encumbrances in the number right from the balance sheet. They'll put their reserve for encumbrances in here. I've seen all sorts of different things in here. The easiest way is like Jared explained it. This is your turnbacks. It's what you didn't spend or encumber to spend later from a budget line item in the general fund.
We have a question in the chat. Is there a grouping for the positives or each budget line treated separately? So each budget line should be treated separately. We want all of the individual lines, what gets turned back or returned.
And again, these are all general fund turnbacks that we're looking for here. Oh, we get another question in there, Tom?
We do. So should I subtract a negative amount from a positive within the same budget? No, we don't want you subtracting any negatives. We want just the positive amounts that come back.
If you have negative numbers in these, they're likely going to be appropriation deficits that you're setting up. Other than, you know, well, also including, but it's a legal one, is snow and ice is the big one.
All right.
Andrew, question 12A.
All right. So along with the question Jared just covered there, the encumbrance, the unencumbered, unexpended, this is the other question that causes a lot of headaches for people on the balance sheet. So this question is asking you to report all of your votes from free cash. And the form is broken up into two sides there. The left side is votes for the fiscal year that just ended. The right-hand side is for votes for the fiscal year that is upcoming. So if this was a live form for this year, the left-hand side would be for 2025. And the right-hand side would be for 2026. So any votes you had from free cash after it was certified last year. So in this case, it was certified on October 26, 2023. You see, we certified 3,572,920 on October 26th of 2023. Any votes from that free cash that were used for the year that you were living in at that point would go on the left-hand side. It looks like they had a special town meeting in April on the same night as their annual town meeting, and they voted $1,635,000 of free cash, either for a project there to true up the budget or something along those lines, but something that was happening in that current year. That number goes on the left-hand side. The same night, they had an annual town meeting and they voted $1,167,920 of free cash for the budget for the next year. So that money is going to be used for in this case, it was the 2025 budget. If this was a live form for this year, it would be for the 2026 budget. That number is going to be shown as a reserve for expenditure on your balance sheet. And it comes from free cash here. So you see, we go down to part C of this form, and you put in that 1,167,920. These are the numbers that make up your reserve for expenditure. There, in this case, they only use that free cash number. Had you used some overlay surplus, which some people use for the ensuing year's budget, it would be listed on this next line. If you had any other random source of funding, sometimes you'll see stabilization or something else. It's very rare to see something other than free cash or overlay surplus. We have some lines here for you. Those numbers will total up down to the circled number there. You see on the bottom right, the 1,167,920, and that number should check to your balance sheet for reserve for expenditures. The number to the left, the $770,000, is what you had remaining in free cash after all of the spending was done for that year. That is what is a starting point. That 770 is basically your starting point for this year's free cash number. It is what you had left from last year, and now we're going to build off of that with all of the other pieces of what you accumulated during the year towards free cash. Questions?
Not seeing any.
Great. All right. Go ahead, Tom.
Yep, we're there. Seeing 12B?
Yep. All right, so this one looks just like the last question. There is going to be one of these for each enterprise fund. So if you have 2 enterprise funds in your community, you're going to have to answer 2 more of these. And if you have 9 enterprise funds, like the town that has the most in the state, you're going to have 9 of these to do. But there's one for each enterprise fund, and it deals with your retained earnings. But it is just like we went through with the free cash. You have the total amount certified up top, the date it was certified, and then any votes for the year that you were living in during the goes on that left-hand column. So if your retained earning, if your enterprise fund was running behind or running short during the year, and you voted some retained earnings to true up the fund, or you spent some money for capital during the year, any of that, it goes here on the left-hand side. If you're voting some retained earnings to supplement the budget for the next year, or for a capital item that you're going to invest in the next year, it goes on the right. And it's just like the free cash one, except we're doing this for retained earnings. It's all the same concept. The reserve for expenditure on the balance sheet should tie out to that number on the bottom right, the $48,000 here. You won't have overlay surplus or anything in this. You're only going to have retained earnings likely that is going to be part of your reserve for expenditure. And the ending balance is what you're carrying forward on the left-hand side. All right.
All right.
Go right ahead. I think we have multiple in here. It's all the same concept. I'm not going to explain it multiple times more than I have already, but this town had more than one enterprise fund.
They actually had 3. So I'll take over now for so question 13, kind of wrapping up the checklist now. Report the amount of unappropriated overlay surplus closed to undesignated fund balance. So if the assessors in your community declared overlay surplus, it gets set up in the general fund as fund balance reserve for overlay surplus. Then that money either needs to be appropriated as an available fund, or if it doesn't get appropriated as an available fund, that is when that amount would show up here on question 13. So the assessors would declare a surplus. It does not get appropriated within the current fiscal year. That balance that was released, that would get closed out here to question 13. Question 14, are there any requests for reimbursement signed on or before September 30th supporting Chapter 90 deficit account balances for which the funds were received after September 30th? So if you answer yes to this question, you had Chapter 90 monies that you hadn't received, but you had applied for them, you're going to want to add an upload to the balance sheet checklist and include the application cover page to Mass Highway. All right, we only need the cover page that should be signed. We don't need all of the backup documentation, but the Mass Highway form needs to be signed.
Yeah,
Andrew, anything else?
I'm just going to say that same thing again. Please only send us the cover page for this, the signed cover page, signed by all of the parties that need to sign it, dated properly and with the amounts on it. We want that. We do not need all of the engineering reports that go to DOT for all of that. We will get these sometimes, and it will be a cover page and then 70 pages of engineering documents and backup information, and then another cover page. And we're sifting through, a PDF that's 400 pages long, trying to find a needle in a haystack, the 4 individual cover pages that may be in there that total up to the amount we need. So please just send us the cover pages. I appreciate you have to put all that information together for DOT, but it is for DOT and not DOR. Thank you.
Yeah, and now if you kind of skip over this question and you answer no, and there is a deficit for Chapter 90, we're not going to come back and ask you a second time. All right. So please take your time when you're going through these forms and answer them thoroughly and completely. Many times we'll do a balance sheet and we will see a deficit for Chapter 90. The question on the checklist is a no. We continue on, we certify your free cash. And then we get a phone call. Well, we applied for those. Well, we didn't know that because you didn't fill it out. You answered no in the question. So we like to try to get that ahead of time and not have to try to.
That's why the question is on here, so that
Yeah.
it prompts you to remember to let us know that it exists. There are very large Chapter 90 deficits out there, hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes millions, and that can really impact your free cash. So be on top of that and make sure you include that information, or at minimum, let us know that the answer is yes and you intended to include it, just forgot to attach the thing, and we will at least know if you answer yes that you have something and we will ask you for it. But if you answer no, we're going to assume you didn't have anything, you didn't include anything, and we will move on.
And Tom, just one other point.
Yeah.
If you do not have a Chapter 90 deficit, then there's no need to upload anything. This is specifically if there is a deficit in the account and your community wants to get credit for it, and that so that it's not a reduction to free cash.
And this is the only one, the Chapter 90 programs, there are 2 or 3 of them. This is the only one where you don't have to have received the money by September 30th. You just have to have applied for it. All other grants and things like that, receipts, all of those need to be received by September 30 in order to get credit for it.
Thank you. Question 15. City or town self-insurance for employees and retiree health. So we want to know, is your city or town self-insured? Do you have self-insurance? If so, then you need to go down and tell us what your deductible per claim is for your stop loss policy, the total claims paid in the fiscal year, and then most importantly, you need to tell us what the incurred but not reported, the IBNR, incurred but not reported, is at June 30th. This number needs to be booked on your balance sheet. So we check this answer on this question to the balance sheet. If you have a number here and it's not on the balance sheet, we're going to have you revisit that on the balance sheet because it needs to be booked. You have to book that liability. Anyone else? Question 16 is the same. We're looking for an other self-insurances. So dental would be one, workers' comp, and
Vision.
dental vision would be those are the most common.
Hey, Tom, there's a question in the chat, okay?
Yeah, shoot.
All right, this is for question number 14, just backing up to the Chapter 90 question. For 14, it's only if we did not receive the funds by September 30th, right? If we record a deficit on the balance sheet for Chapter 90, but it came in on September 10th, we don't need to include that amount. So good question. So if on June 30th, you have a deficit balance of, let's just say, $10,000 in your special revenue, Chapter 90 or capital, depending on where you report it, and the funds come in on September 10th, the $10,000 comes in. There's a spot on the combined balance sheet template where you would just put in the $10,000 receipt, and so that would negate the deficit that you have, and we would give you credit for it. That is correct. We would not ask for any other backup documentation.
Correct.
That's assuming your balance sheet came in after September 10th too.
Yes.
All right, we have another question that came in here too. It says, is IOD 111F? I'm not 100% sure what that means. Oh, is IOD 111F also considered for the self-insurance question number 16? So I'm not sure what IOD is, but
Yeah.
For self-insurance purposes, if your community is taking on the liability for the employees and the insurance, that's what we're considering self-insurance. If you are part of a larger insurance company, a group, and you pay a premium to them, then chances are you're not self-insured. I don't know if Tom or Andrew, you guys want to add to that?
No, you're good.
Yeah, no, you're good. I'm not. Yeah. we're good.
All right, questions are rolling in here. Let's see here. Let me see if there's anything
Oh,
else.
wow.
All right, it says injured on duty, kind of
Oh,
like
injured on
workers' comp for police and fire.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
when we talk about questions 15, we're specifically talking about self-insured for health insurance. And question 16 would be if the community is self-insured for other pieces. So some communities pay a premium and they're insured by another company and they don't take on the liability. But in some cases they can be self-insured for dental or for vision, and then they're taking on that liability. So it
I
depends
don't
on.
believe, we are not looking for IOD then on question 16.
Yeah, that would be not, yeah, correct. We don't, that not to be included.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right, question 17. So if you're not self-insured, are you a member of a regional or county self-insurance plan? So we kind of want to know what insurance each community has, whether you're self-insured or if you're part of a group, and we want to know the name of the group and who that administrator is. Question 18, will your city or town have an audit for FY24? Believe it or not, there are some communities still out there that are pretty small and they don't have annual audits. But if you do have an annual audit, we like to track who the current audit firm is. Question 19, what is your accounting software? What accounting software do you use? So we built a database. Well, I don't know, I want to call it a database, but we put a list together a few years ago. And we were trying to find out which communities had which software. So we like to know any changes that happen with that. So we ask that annually. And the last question, question 20, do you use a payroll vendor? So are you using a vendor, third-party vendor, or you're doing it in-house? So obviously, if you're answering yes, you have a third-party vendor. We're looking for that information here. So that wraps
Hey,
up the
Tom.
checklist. Now, what are we going to use this information for? We just asked you to fill out 20 questions, and what are we using it for? The
Tom, quick
primary.
question.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
We got another question in the chat here. In the Q&A, sorry.
That's okay.
It says, this is referring to question number 9, which are other financing sources. It says, if there are transfers from several special revenue accounts, can they be consolidated into one line or do they need to be broken out? If they're,
I would
Go
say
ahead.
on that, if their budgeted and actual is equal, you could probably roll some stuff on the lines there. But if the budgeted and actual amounts are not equal, then we're going to want to see those broken out so we can see what it is, make sure it's something that's allowable, things like that.
see, something else might have popped in here. All right, another question. Do you publicize the answers to these questions so other communities can see who is self-insured, who the audit firms are, what accounting softwares are out there, and who the payroll vendors are? You know, the information is something that we can extract, but I'm going to let Deb Wagner answer this question.
So we use that information mostly for internal purposes only. As far as who the audit firms are, sometimes we're asked by other state agencies, generally speaking, who the audit firms that do business with the municipalities in the Commonwealth are. Also, what accounting software do you use? That was a question, and also payroll vendor. That was a question that our Financial Management Resources Bureau group wanted us to ask because they keep track of, who uses what type of accounting software. And they're the group that's sort of like the consulting arm of the Division of Local Services, and they might go out to municipalities that do a financial management review at your invitation. They don't just show up. But it's helpful for us to know what are the most widely used accounting software packages and payroll packages used, because sometimes we might have a need to potentially reach out to a vendor. For example, Munis, one of the things that the Munis software does is it does not subtotal accounts. Like, for example, you'll have real estate levy of 2002, levy of 2003, levy of 2004, 5, 6 on your trial balance. And we actually, by hand, will use our adding machines and total those up because the Munis software does not do that. So, you know, there are a large number of communities in the Commonwealth that use Munis software. And so, you know, we've in the past tried to have meetings with different software vendors to ask for modifications that would be potentially helpful to us during our review. So that's what we use that kind of information for.
Yeah,
Regarding, yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
I was just gonna say, I mean, we also had an issue, I think it's happened twice in my years here, where we have had a payroll vendor who has committed some illegal acts and taken some of town's monies and disappeared with them. So it was helpful for us to know what towns were in business with that payroll vendor in the past.
And as far as self-insurance, you know, that comes with some risks. And so it's helpful for us to know which communities have self-insurance plans for either insurance or dental, things like that. I don't know if the supervisors want to add something on top of that. But we don't publish the information.
There aren't a lot of self-insurance in the state. It is, I think, just over 20.
Another question came in for question number 20. Payroll vendor. So you mean a third party? We have an payroll employee who processes payroll in our Munis system. So would that answer be no? So that is correct. So if you do your payroll in-house, then you would answer, you do not have an outside. So if you have an outside third party, that's what we want. That would be the payroll vendor. You would choose yes, and then enter in who that person is or what company it is.
There is another question in the chat, and I'll let the supervisors answer it. But again, you have to remember that the balance sheet checklist we're using for this presentation is last year's checklist. And so the fiscal years referenced are 1 year off. So you just have to remember that. And I think that's what's causing the confusion in this particular question. So
yeah, that's what I was trying to highlight.
Yeah. And so you have to just picture those columns. Instead of saying 24 and 25, you have to picture them as saying 25 and 26. So, but I'll let the supervisors handle the question.
Tom, there was one more question that came in. Would you go back up to 12A?
Does somebody want to handle the question? Okay.
Yeah, I'll do the free cash one.
All right, Andrew's going to get that. All right, Tom, you want to
the
go
one
back
that we just asked, the one, the most recent one, Jared? Yeah, I get confused, ATM, free cash amount.
You got it.
Do we use what was voted on in 24 or 25? You're using any free cash votes that have been taken since last year's free cash was certified are going to go on the checklist. If it was used for the year that just ended, the year that closed as of June 30th goes on that left-hand side. So take out the years, because I don't want to confuse, 24, 25, now we're in 26. If it's the year as of June 30 that just ended, it goes in the left-hand column. If it's for the year that's you're about to begin or you're living in now, the current year, then it goes in the right-hand column.
All right, Jared, you want to go back? You want to go back?
No, I think that's good. We
We're
just
good?
wanted to
Okay.
touch, we wanted to touch back on
one.
that. All right, another question came in. For Chapter 90, it is now done through a portal per our DPW director, so I don't think there is a signed off cover page to upload. Would a confirmation email work if that is what he receives?
I've been getting a signed off. I think they have to upload that signed off cover page into the portal. I haven't done one, obviously. I don't work on the side that you folks work on there, but I have done several balance sheets this year already, and I have gotten the cover page for Chapter 90.
I have as well.
I assume that the portal is just a place to upload the information that they need. And that form is still a part of things. If I am incorrect, we're gonna have to revisit that and talk to people, but so far I have gotten the cover sheet from everyone.
Yep, I have as well, Andrew, so.
All right, some more questions are rolling in. Do you happen to know what's going on with vendor web right now? And do you have any suggestions on how else to reconcile state aid? Our vendor web has shown 2 deposits since August 1st, but many more have hit our bank account. We usually use vendor web to make sure that the funds that the state is intending to give us are going into the bank and correct GL accounts. So vendor web is through the state treasurer's, the comptroller's office. So unfortunately, we don't have access, or we have access to vendor web, but we don't have control or insight into how vendor web is operating. I would recommend, on the vendor web website to reach out to one of the contacts there to see if there is an issue, with them posting their state aid.
Yeah, I haven't heard that anywhere else either, so it could be something specific to your community. Something might be messed up on the mapping or something. I don't know what's going on there. That's not a question I've heard more than this, so.
All right, continue on. So what have we collected all of this information for? The balance sheet checklist is a very important form that comes in with your free cash. And all the answers you just gave us are now going to be put into this, our free cash proof. All right. So when we calculate, your field rep will get your balance sheet. They will calculate free cash. And then they will look at your free cash proof. And we extract all of the answers from that checklist to this proof in Gateway. Okay. So our form starts out with the prior year free cash certified, 3,572,920 as reference. Then the current calculation, what we have calculated based on the current balance sheet submitted, that totaled 4,627,145. So that's the number we would like to, that's the number we're going to approve. We want to see if we can prove the information you've given us in the checklist within a 15% range, plus or minus. So we need to get within a range of 3,933,073 to 5,321,217. If the answers to the checklist put into this form come within that range, we're comfortable in certifying your free cash for the year. So all of the information is coming directly from the checklist. So we'll look at any revenue deficits. We haven't seen revenue deficits in the state in over 30 years, as far as I've been around. I don't remember seeing any, but that's one of the questions. You would answer there. Excess and shortfall and local receipts comes right from checklist question number 6. That amount was 2,398,429. On the next line, we add your actual revenue received but not estimated, which was checklist question number 7. There was nothing on that line, so it's 0. We look at your excess shortfall of cherry sheet receipts, question number 8. When we looked at those numbers, there was a shortfall of 33,499, so that goes into the calculation. We also then look at your unencumbered, unexpended appropriations. That was checklist number 11. That was all of the amounts in your year-to-date budget report that didn't get spent, those turnbacks. That was 1,503,668. If you had a negative free cash certified in the prior year, we would add that back here because you start at 0. There was no negative free cash certified, so it's 0. Question 12A, Andrew talked about, add prior year free cash not appropriated. That amount was 770,000. Then we go to question 13, any overlay surplus closed. Now remember, that's overlay surplus that did not get appropriated in the budget. Amounts that did not get appropriated but closed back out to undesignated fund balance. That amount would go in there. The next section we look at is the change in your receivables. So we look at all of the prior year receivables, tax receivables. So personal property tax, real estate tax, tax liens, tax foreclosures, and deferred or rollback taxes. We look at those individually compared last year's receivable to this year's. So in this case, when you total up all those receivables, they actually increased from last year. You have more money owed to you. So that's negative. You have less money received. So it's a negative 98,677 that would be impacting your free cash. If your receivables were lower in the current year, obviously that number would be positive. That would mean you received more money and would help your free cash. The top line on this page, the net change in adjustments to free cash. So those are all of your free cash hits. When you look at the free cash form, we start with your undesignated fund balance. We subtract your real estate and personal property tax receivables. Then we go through all of your other funds, special revenue, capital, trust, agency, any of those accounts that are in deficit that we reduce your free cash for, we total those up and we compare them here. So we compare last year's hits to free cash versus this year's hits to free cash. Last year, there was $2,157 of reductions. This year, there were none. Therefore, that's a positive amount in this year's calculation of the proof. Any other adjustments? Those could be the other financing sources and uses questions. Those, I think, I forget what number those are, but.
Questions 9 and 10.
9 and 10.
9 and 10, thank you. Questions 9 and 10. If there were any variances there in those, you could put those numbers in here. And then we add up everything we have. And we have identified, based on the checklist you filled out and answered all those questions, 4,542,078. So if we go back up, we're looking to get within a range of 3,009,000 to 5,003,000. Up here at the top, the 85 to 115. And our identified free cash is 4,542,078. So we are within our range. We actually do a little percentage at the bottom. So we've identified 98.16% of your free cash calculated amount. We're very happy when it falls within that range. I would say the majority of them do. If you fall outside the range, if you're on the low end or the high end, we're going to want to follow up to the answers on your checklist. We need to prove the free cash to certify it. So if you're outside that range, which is a pretty big range, so it doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen sometimes, your field rep will be following up with questions to go back over the checklist and maybe ask some other things that could be impacting this.
You got a couple more questions.
Okay.
One is the free cash proof available to us to see on our end? The free cash proof is an internal document. If we're having problems, as Tom just mentioned, your rep may send you a copy of the free cash form to show you what we're getting and why we're having trouble proving, to help you work with us to resolve it. After your free cash is certified, if you reached out to your rep, they probably could be sharing it with you if you want down the end. Next question is, can we get an electronic copy of this form which we used to guide the discussion so we can correspond with our notes? I assume that means the presentation. Jennifer, are you sending the presentation to anyone? Will it be made available afterwards?
Yep, I'll be sending it out via email.
Okay, great.
Along with the survey. So that will, and the video, the recording. So that will go out early next week.
Oh, you're getting all sorts of prizes. Everyone's getting a big give backs after this training. Let's see. I had to step away. Sorry. Is the free cash proof on Gateway to View? No, the free cash proof is not. It is an internal document, so it is not on there. It's not something that you folks on your end can see.
So that's the end of the presentation. We're happy to take any other questions.
If you think of something after the fact, you can reach out to your field rep, one of us if you need to, contact someone from the Bureau of Accounts and they can try and help you. If you have questions after the fact, once you get this information from Jennifer with the video and the presentation, if that sparks something in your mind that you want to ask about, certainly reach out to your field rep. Every community has one. There's a list of them on the website of who represents each community. And if you can't find who you want to, or you're not getting the answers you want, you can try reaching out to one of us.
There you go. Somebody just loaded something in Q&A. You can create your own proof in an Excel spreadsheet.
What other classes are we teaching in the near future? Is there still capacity in the Newton class, Jennifer?
I do have it waitlisted right now. I am going to review, but if folks still want to sign up, you look for it's actually in the DLS alert that was sent out earlier this month. That's where the link is, because I have taken it off the website since it is waitlisted. There is also in October, if you're looking for any of our events, you'll see there at the top of the webpage. So if you go to our webpage, all of our events come up. And I know we're going to be doing one on enterprise funds. So.
And then non-DLS sponsored, Jared and I will be presenting on the recap, doing a presentation on the full recap also at the Accountants and Auditors Association in November in Devens. But this is the slow time for presentations from us, as we're about to get pretty busy with balance sheets and recaps.
I do need to read one of the Q&As because it's very funny, and I appreciate that somebody put this in there. It says, considering what a failure my checklist was last year, I can only get better. Well, you know what? We see a lot of bad checklists that come in. There's definitely a lot of questions to these, but I appreciate you sharing that comment. Got a couple of chuckles out of it.
And I think the tax rate recap seminar, we had one yesterday, and there's one in Newton. They are not recorded, they're in person, and they're all day, so it's just not possible to record them. So, but I can share the actual presentation now.
Thank you all for coming, and I hope you got something out of it. And like I said, if you have further questions down the road, reach out to your field rep or to one of the three of us.
Thank you.
Look forward to doing all your balance sheets this season.
And improved checklists.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.